Hi everyone, here and around the world. In last week's Earthfiles YouTube channel podcast, reported about basketball-sized glowing spheres linked to UFOs that retired Pentagon ATTIP intelligence analyst Luis Elizondo describes in his new book. He, his wife, and daughter saw green glowing spheres about 9 inches in diameter pass right through walls in their home several times, as if the family was being monitored. Beyond green, UFO orbs range in colors from orange to yellow to red to white and to blue. But it is the blue spheres that are historically considered dangerous because they can enter animals and human bodies and temporarily paralyze and burn tissues. Now, I have a copy of Lou Elizondo's excellent, historically, it's such an important book, Inside the Pentagon's Hunt for UFOs, Imminent. And he includes a blue orb report on page 69. Quote, studied by Will Livingston, the ATTIP team's medical consultant. Livingston had also studied a Brazil case of blue orbs that passed through a woman's body, causing her to become ill. Further, at Skinwalker Ranch, Utah, 2 dogs owned by a rancher chased a blue orb into a field only to vanish in yipes of pain, leaving behind nothing but 2 grease spots on the sagebrush that contain remnants of the 2 dogs' biology. Body fluid, blood, and small amounts of tissue. Literally all that was left of the poor creatures. To researchers, it looked as if the orbs had somehow vaporized the dogs, scorching nearby vegetation. A beam of directed energy from a powerful laser or radioactive weapon was the presumed cause, close quote. Lou Elizondo states in Chapter 6, quote, I was shocked by the frequency of how often these orbs have been reported, whether by commercial pilots or military pilots or by eyewitnesses on the ground, particularly around military test ranges and sensitive U.S. military facilities. I never had any interaction with orbs until I started working with the ATTIP program in the Pentagon, close quote. I highly recommend all of you read this extremely important and historic book by Luis Elizondo, available now at Amazon.com. He was an American military intelligence official who was the former director of the Pentagon's Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, also known as ATTIP, created in 2007 as part of the Defense Intelligence Agency, DIA. His job was to investigate UFOs and UAPs. His office was on the 5th floor of the Pentagon Sea Ring until October 2017, when he turned in his resignation letter, quote, to protest what he characterized as excessive secrecy and internal Pentagon opposition, close quote. In his resignation letter to then U.S. Secretary of Defense James Mattis, Lou Elizondo asked, quote, Why aren't we spending more time and effort on this UFO UAP issue? Close quote. Luis Elizondo also wrote, quote, with that in mind, bureaucratic challenges and inflexible mindsets continue to plague the department at all levels. This is particularly true regarding the controversial topic of anomalous aerospace threats. Despite overwhelming evidence at both the unclassified and the classified levels, certain individuals in the department remain staunchly opposed to further research on what could be a tactical threat to our pilots, sailors, and soldiers, and perhaps even an existential threat to our national security. In many instances, there seems to be a direct correlation that the phenomena exhibits with respect to our nuclear and military capabilities. The department must take seriously the many accounts by the Navy and other services of unusual aerial systems interfering with military weapon platforms and displaying beyond next-generation capabilities. Underestimating or ignoring these potential threats is not in the best interest of the department, no matter the level of political contention. There remains a vital need to ascertain capability and intent of these phenomena for the benefit of the armed forces and the nation, close quote. For this reason, effective 4 October 2017, I humbly submit my resignation in hopes it will encourage you to ask the hard questions. Who else knows? What are their capabilities? And why aren't we spending more time and effort on the issue? As I transition to a new chapter of my life, please know it has been an honor and privilege of a lifetime to serve with you. Rest assured, no matter where the path of life may lead me, I will always have the best interest of the department and the American people as my guiding principle, close quote. Luis D. Elizondo, Director, National Programs, Special Management Staff for the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence. Ironically, it was 3 decades earlier, in 1992, that another American man with no connections to the Pentagon or Department of Defense began receiving what he considered to be revelations from unseen beings about other life in this universe that provoked him to found a religious nonprofit in 1992 when he was 32 years old. His name is Marshall Vian Summers. He created a nonprofit in 1992 that he called the Society for the Greater Community Way of Knowledge. Since then, he has written many books he says are transcribed from spontaneous downloads from unseen beings. His biography states that, quote, his first book, released in 2001, was entitled The Allies of Humanity, an urgent message about the extraterrestrial presence in the world today. Marshall Summers says this first book was transmitted to him from extraterrestrial beings present in the physical and not extra-dimensional, but were in resonance with a divine source that he records and then transcribes. After that first 2001 book, 4 years later came Book 2, The Allies of Humanity, Human Unity, Freedom, and the Hidden Reality of Contact. And by 2009, he produced a third book, The Great Waves of Change, Navigating the Difficult Times Ahead. In this book, he was stressing, quote, there are great waves of change coming to the world. They will be unlike anything humanity as a whole has ever had to face before. They are largely the consequence of humanity's misuse and overuse of the world and its resources. Do not think that any foreign power would come here to try to help you without wanting something from you. Do not think any foreign power would extend itself to humanity and its difficult circumstances, expending this wealth and this energy, unless they had a great and secret motive. History teaches that intervention, a policy of interfering in another nation's affairs through coercion or threat of force, is always carried out for self-interest, and that races such as humans on Earth that face foreign intervention by extraterrestrials could be devastated by it, and in some cases destroyed entirely. The emphasis now must not be on the national security for one nation alone, but on security for the entire world. Do not think that any foreign power would come here to try to help you without wanting something from you. Close quote. And by 2012, Marshall Summers released, quote, The Reality and Spirituality of Life in the Universe, his fourth book. At the top of the list of concerns about Earth, he says he received back then and has continued to receive to the current day is serious worry about all the government and military secrecy surrounding UFOs and E.T.s that keep the world public in the dark about other intelligences interacting with Earth that Marshall Summers thinks want to control this beautiful blue planet while humans serve them, the non-humans. Now, 75 years old, Marshall Vian Summers is seriously concerned about his fellow Homo sapien not understanding that life is not guaranteed on Earth, and a lot of other intelligences would like to control Earth. Luis Elizondo recently told Newsweek, quote, I investigated UAPs at the Pentagon, and Americans can handle the truth, close quote. As former Pentagon ATTIP director, Elizondo leads the way to more government and intelligence agency truths about an alien presence on our Earth now and for millennia. And recently, it was Marshall Vian Summers who talked with me about what he thinks has to happen to keep Earth and humanity stable while extraterrestrials are finally going to be officially introduced to humans on Earth.
We're entering a universe of intelligent life that we know nothing about.
And there is a lot of deception. It's like Earth is in play and has been for a long time, and the game is genetic manipulation of already evolving primates, humanoids on this planet. But what do the non-humans really want from Earth life and humans? If all was good and okay, wouldn't we have been told centuries ago?
My focus has been on what has occurred in the last century, those forces that are in the world today who are here for a specific purpose. These forces have come into our world at a time where they knew that we would be environmental breakdown, cultural breakdown, resource depletion, and so forth. They certainly read the signature of our atmosphere, which is indicative that we will have to go through a period of decline and adaptation, which we're beginning to do now. And they see that this is the opportune time to be here and to intervene. And one of the reasons this is the opportune time is we have created a technological and physical infrastructure that they can use. They don't have to build anything because they're here for the planet. They're not here for us. But we are important to them because we can live here and we've adapted this environment and we have a certain level of intelligence. So they need humanity to work for them. That's very, very important to consider because that changes the whole conversation about who's there and why they're here. People think they're here because they're here to support us, to uplift us, engage with us, give us what we need to avoid catastrophe within our own world. But they've been here for 80 years, or 90 years, or maybe 100 years. And they have been participating behind the scenes, never revealing their identity, their purpose, their methods, or overall goals. Meanwhile, they've been abducting people for probably 80 years or longer.
And harvesting sperm and eggs.
Harvesting sperm, and they've been also a hybridization program. And that hybridization program is for only one purpose, and that is to create, eventually, leadership for humanity. They can't live here for environmental and atmospheric reasons, but they also can't live here because of the biological hazards of our world. I mean, they're here to explore the possibilities of gaining access to Earth's resources and actually gaining control of Earth. We see we're entering a period of real human decline, not destruction, not total collapse, but greater and greater instability, at which point they could announce themselves, we're here to save you. We have the technology. We can do all these things for you. We can supply free energy for you. We can do all the things that you can't do for yourself. But it's all an empty narrative. They don't have any of these things. They don't represent a planet. These are creatures who live in space, and they propagate themselves in space. And so they represent other nations within the great trading networks around us who want to see the Earth come into their influence.
There are a variety of different types of non-humans that are illustrated and have been by people for decades. And you hear that the tall whites that are 10 to 12 feet tall would stand out anywhere in the world, that they have a vested interest, without explaining what that vested interest is, in seeing us survive and evolve, and that some of their allies are the blonde, blue-eyed, pink-skinned, known as the Nordics, and that those two, the tall whites and the blonde Nordics, have fought other wars and are allegedly trying to help humans against anything else that is trying to encroach on Earth. Then there are the grays, the varieties of reptilians, blue teals. The list now is getting on to 20 different types that may actually be in this Earth environment because maybe they're curious or they want to take advantage of a situation. Do you personally, in any of your dialogue with the thought that dwells in the light, divine intelligence, do you have any solid sense that there are actual vested interests in E.T.s, such as the tall whites and the Nordics, that they care about us and want to see us survive? And if that were true, why?
Okay, well, that's a big question, and I'd like to look at it from a couple of different angles. I've never spent time with the different archetypes because the prevailing presence in the world can present themselves in any kind of shape or form. People have experienced seeing a deer, and it was actually a gray that was there to take them on board, or seeing Jesus at the foot of their bed, and it was a group of aliens. They can make you think what you're seeing. So people see things, and what are you really seeing? Are you really seeing what's being shown to you to see? And this is part of the cloaking device to fool people into thinking that they're spiritual beings, and they tell the people that they speak to and capture that they're angelic beings or they're connected to the angelic foundation. They're here to save us from ourselves. They have everything we need if we'll only pay attention and accept their presence. But this is all narratives of seducing people. We believe. People want to believe. Our world is becoming ever more concerning, ever more frightening. So this is a perfect entry point for this force, which has been in the background all these many years, to begin to show themselves. The military is seeing more sightings, having more close encounters, more engagements. This is all part of a long-range plan. When you think of the long game, you're playing a long game. You take a long time to achieve your goals, and in that way, you exploit the adversary's weaknesses and vulnerabilities, and that's exactly what they're doing.
I've talked with half a dozen people who have worked in aerospace, physics, medicine, about their firsthand knowledge of some association with non-humans. And the ones that have left me feeling like maybe this makes sense are people in high-end aerospace who have said to me, I've worked shoulder to shoulder with a tall white, and that they're geniuses, and they can manipulate time and move dimensions, and they can go 100 light years in seconds because they know how to go in and out of dimensions. And that the people who have told me this, they have never said or implied that they felt that the tall whites wanted to hurt humans, that in fact they had a spiritual discipline in which they wanted to expand life on this planet and other planets. If that's true, why couldn't the tall whites have been introduced a long time ago to planet Earth? We're not alone. They are not threatening. They are willing to help. They're interested in expanding life. And then we would be past the issue of whether there were other beings that wanted to eliminate us or hurt us. Right now, it seems to be a very fuzzy, not clear.
Yes.
So why do you think, as we go into the middle of 2024, that there is still this whole huge murky issue that Philip J. Corso, when he was working in the Pentagon and Dwight D. Eisenhower was president, and that he wrote that brilliant book, The Day After Roswell, about his experiences knowing there were E.T.s and knowing that it was considered to be not reportable to the world at the time. That's the confusion. Why? Couldn't this have been announced then?
This is something because I think the confusion was intentional, both on the part of the deep government and on the part of calling it intervention because it has intervened. And these are uninvited guests who won't disclose their purpose, their activities, or their agenda. So we are right now is too immature to be able to deal with the realities of engagement with other forms of intelligent life in the universe without our agreement, without our approval, and even without our readiness. So nobody should be in your world right now. Nobody. I don't care how they present themselves, what form they take, who they claim to be, what they claim to provide. This is all deception. And we are lost in this maze of different appearances and phenotypes and messaging and things like that. And so 80 years of UFO research has only answered the first question, which is what is happening? And that isn't really answered. Why is it happening? What does it mean? And how do we deal with it? We haven't even gotten to those questions yet, and it's late in the game.
And what the headline today essentially is, coming through Luis Elizondo, yes, we have E.T.s. And yes, in the last 3 inches of the big Luis Elizondo article, as for our friends from out of town, they do not appear to be benevolent.
Absolutely not. I know abductees are conditioned before they are sent back to believe they've had a positive experience. And so their real experience have been covered over as part of the manipulation. So people come back and think, wow, that was great, or it was terrible, or whatever. But what's really going on, we are the natives of this world. And that has been claimed by different groups. Oh, we're your ancestors. We're your progenitors. We're the one who seeded you. We're the one who's here now to come back and rescue you from your own errors. So all these kinds of narratives are being spun to people, and they're very convincing, particularly if you've lost faith in humanity and institutions. Then you're going to give your faith to something, and this void is being filled by the intervention. It's not confusing. They want the planet. They need us to work for them. Planets like this are so valuable. When you're destroying a planet of that value, you're going to draw interest and eventually intervention. Totally understandable. If you're a nation in this world, and you're sitting on vast amounts of wealth that you're not exploiting, you're going to draw attention and intervention. If you look at the history of humanity, it's a history of intervention. You look at the history of natural history, it's a history of competition for dominance. The fact is, we're too adolescent to be in the universe. The universe is a tough place. It's highly competitive, warlike. Nations would just destroy each other, as they have probably over millennia. But larger nations, they've had to establish a stability formed on mutual survival, because surviving in the universe is not easy.
For those of you who would like to read Marshall Summers' books and ongoing new information, go to marshallsummers.com/books and www.alliesofhumanity.org. And for those who would like to contact Marshall Summers directly, go to contact@marshallsummers.com. And for Lou Elizondo's new excellent and historic book, go to amazon.com. And I know that Ian is standing by in England. He's been watching the chat, and I'm going to go to Ian right now with the idea of, Ian, give me a sense and the audience a sense of what the comments have been since we are talking about kind of the revolutionary moment on the Earth when finally extraterrestrial intelligence in this planet is finally going to be announced and introduced, even though there have been sections of the population in their work and their history have already known, even interacted with non-humans. And so as we now are transitioning in this revolutionary moment, what is the feedback tonight so far on important books in different directions by different people? How does this resonate with our Earthfiles YouTube channel viewers?
Yeah, it's a good question. And the Earthfiles audience are looking at a large perspective, let's say, and let's say that they're also concerned about any hostile intent, any sort of deception that's been highlighted, but also on a positive view about whether or not there's E.T.s with positive agendas to save humanity and walk with us and help us through these difficult times.
That we do have what some people in aerospace or medicine or science or Marshall Summers is, they all have various facets talking about how there is some vested interest in helping evolution, but the problem is that it's not clear to the 8 billion people who are Homo sapien living on Earth. And that has been the frustration for centuries, I think. And here we are. Is it going to break open? And why doesn't it break open now? What still is holding it back? I would be very interested if we have any people who are in military or science or medicine who are in our chat tonight who may have some insights and they could contribute anonymously. I know we've done that in the past. If there is someone with other information, contribute. I know that in the next few weeks at Earthfiles, I have what I think is extraordinary information on several different subjects, and I'm going to introduce it program by program, hoping that we're leading up. Is it going to be in 2024, 2025? People I've talked with said they don't think that this can be kept secret any longer beyond 2026. We'll see. But Ian, I now transition to you to give us a sense of what others who are listening tonight think in terms of what Ian Summers, and for those who have read the great Luis Elizondo book, there's two different pools of content. I would sure like to know what people are thinking and saying.
Well, I was speaking earlier to Angelica, who lives in Hollywood, Los Angeles, and she wants me to put a question to you, Linda. I think this is also based upon what Luis Elizondo has been saying in his book about the so-called Collins elite, a certain section of the government who believed that these intentions were of E.T.s were hostile and demonic in a sense. She says, are we involved in some sort of spiritual war? And she also says she prays every day that good will prevail.
In my earthfiles.com huge website, if you do a search on, it would be Ray, R-A-Y, Boucher, B-O-E-C-H-E. He's been a friend and colleague to me for decades, a minister in a church in Lincoln, Nebraska, highly intelligent, and it goes back to the early 1990s that he was approached by some people in the National Security Agency and another agency. And they wanted to talk with Ray about a lecture, a talk that he had presented having to do with the whole issue of existential crisis potentially in the earth and all of the history and religious history having to do with forces in which there might come a time of existential threat, and was there something that would be in the category of an evil force that might be uncontrollable, or the opposite? It might be controllable because maybe it is white versus black, light versus dark, two big forces. And when Ray approached me and called me, he said, they would like to have a copy of your book, Glimpses of Other Realities, Volume 1, Facts and Eyewitnesses. And I said, I'm happy to send that book, any of my work, if they could have a dialogue with me about what it is that they could tell me that they agreed or not in my books. And all of this that I'm talking about, that entire episode, in every correspondence that we had, and the floppy disk translation, everything is in my www.earthfiles.com website. And you can go there, type in the search bar, Ray Boucher, and all of these reports that I did on this important matter will come up. And here, even though right now I don't have all of their writings in front of me, I called them the writers. You will find that in the book. And it was me asking questions and they replying, and then comments about my book, Glimpses of Other Realities. And the one area that I can reply to the question that Ian has posed, and all of the discussions with Ray and with the NSA, who was anonymous, there was a statement that the government analysts made, was that we were dealing with extraterrestrial biological entities that could be designed as neither benign nor neutral. Those are the exact words that they gave to me. Neither benign nor neutral. And their communication with Ray Boucher and me in many ways over a long period of time boiled down to them trying to say that they had quite a bit of information that would leave them to have great doubts about there being any beneficent, we love you humans, that we are dealing with intelligences that are neither benign nor neutral. And I know that Luis Elizondo also has some perspective along those lines, starting with what he and his wife experienced with the green orbs at their house. And he said in the New York Times last week, it was quoted, that the green orbs would pass through the walls, and he felt there was at least the potential for some kind of danger, possibly from the green orbs. Well, whose orbs are they? What is the direct relationship between, when you look at that illustration that I had of the various types of non-humans that have been drawn over and over by people in the abduction syndrome, and they attribute different motives, different intelligences, different talents to these various beings. And part of the frustration, I think, that I and others feel now, that as we are getting into the last half of 2024, with the Earth increasingly having an agitation and a problem with increasing temperatures and changing environments, it's like what Marshall Summers and others have discussed that they have had in interactions with information from non-humans, that we, as a species, we have been loved and maybe hated and maybe feared, that we are a complex species, that we are contributing to now the deterioration of our great planet, and that somehow this has to get back onto some kind of communication between those that know a lot, like perhaps the tall whites, could have communication that was straightforward and shared with the planet from the first, perhaps, benevolent seeming species that the government allegedly has been working with for some time. But none of us have the hard proof and hard facts in front of us of the extraterrestrial biological entity intelligence motives for being here. There's lots of AI. The beings use AI. There's a wide variety. And it always comes down to, what do they want from us and the Earth? And that's the question that hangs over everything. And that's what is raised in the book and the books and the discussions with these two men who have been, in their own way, one military and the other not, with the same question: what are the intelligences that are interacting in extremely advanced technologies with our Earth? And there's more information that I hope to be sharing here at the Earthfiles YouTube channel in the future about what are referred to as interstellar beings, the IBS or IBs. That I was told this a long time ago. Specific year I can't give you, but it was a long time ago. Linda, the major issues are eventually going to be that we're in a universe that has many dimensions. And we're in the third, and there may be 1, 2 below us. But above us, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, allegedly at least 12, the majestic 12. And that each of those dimensions, there might be an Earth, there might be a Jupiter, there might be echoes from our universe in each of those universes in dimensions, but in each dimension, everything is different. And David Grush has talked about that in some of his private discussions that have leaked out. His saying that the interstellar beings, interdimensional beings, that this is perhaps even more important than the biological entities that are in this third dimensional universe. We have so much to learn, and we're being sort of held back, or I feel that way myself. We need to know the information that I think our government knows in order to try to get the planet perhaps back on a more collaborative toward the same ends of human survival, with knowledge and ability to evolve, because we will learn enough about what's going on in this universe and other beings that we're not going to be straitjacketed, we're not going to be disabled psychologically, emotionally, physically, by the straight fact we're not alone in this universe and never have been. It is full of consciousness. And so are the other dimensional existences. And on that note, Ian, I would like for you, interacting with the chat, to see if there is anybody tonight, like in the previous 2 or 3 shows, who are talking about the importance of understanding not just extraterrestrial biological entities, but interdimensional beings.
Absolutely. I think that's a very important point. TC is in the chat tonight and says, I don't think we're being visited as such. I think we have invisible neighbours. We are either their pets or their project, or maybe both. And another
at
comment
least
here
a project and pets.
That just sums it up here is, EDOS9NC says, kind of makes me wonder if aliens are researchers, poachers, and conservationists and traders. The aliens behave much like humans do. Wouldn't be surprised if they have human pets, designer breeds like we do, domesticated animals.
Well, and they're clearly territorial, secret. What they do is kept in their world. There's definitely planning and strategy about how to approach this planet and us. And I think another one of the questions that is always hanging over these discussions were the Phoenicians, the Sumerians, the Egyptians, and on, were they pure blood extraterrestrials from a planet in this third dimensional universe claiming territory in this particular planet, and then calling themselves our progenitors, which might actually technically be right if they were manipulating genetics then, and that we Homo sapien are the product of many genetic manipulations by many intelligent beings, not all for the same reason. And I know that in private conversations with people that I have known in terms of medicine, in some of the reporting and work that I have done for Earthfiles, that when COVID hit, that one of the, I don't know how to characterize it, but it was implied that COVID might be something like a test to see who are hybrids and who are not. And that things like that have gone on the Earth for a long time by different competing groups. And until we humans finally are on the same level with the varieties of interdimensionals, extraterrestrials that come and go, until we're on the same plane, it's really difficult for us to comprehend what the huge big picture might actually be. But I think without any question that genetic harvesting of sperm and eggs, the manipulation of genetic blood strains, genetic strains on this planet, is a big project by multiple species. So how much of any of us are already out in other planets? It's a fascinating question. And what is it exactly that holds back what feels to me like a dam about to burst? The truth that we're not alone in this universe and we never have been, and what is the real history of this planet, this solar system, Mars, Ganymede, and beyond. And how many solar systems are already known to scientists who sign non-disclosure agreements, in which we already know through the James Webb Telescope that there are artificial frequencies of light that are emanating from at least a dozen planets, and we know that, and it means that there's artificial light like we use it at night. I've talked with some people who have seen the data. Why should that be denied us? Why? It makes no sense. So on that, I'm going back to Ian. What seems to be the sense of what people have the most questions about tonight?
Well, there's lots of comments all over the place with all the aspects of this. Our audience is very switched on and very interested and invested in this subject, and we have a lot of experiences in the chat tonight as well. I want to mention that I Can't Explain. I reached out and I said, does anyone have any hostile orb experiences they want to share? I Can't Explain said, I have touched a few different coloured orbs, but the only one that hurt me was a blue one that came through my window and hit me in the left side of the head. He also goes on to say, a misconception is that greys are weak. That is wrong. They're very strong as humans. Their body density is much more than humans. And Melissa M says, one of her earliest childhood memories was of a blue orb of light that was near her crib. I've experienced phenomena my whole life.
I would sure like to hear more from those of you who may have had firsthand interaction with a blue orb and you're okay. But did you have anything negative occur? Because I've heard that for a long time too. I think Bud Hopkins and I had a discussion once about what do the different colors in the different spheres mean, and why is it, for example, Luis Elizondo, as far as I know, they didn't have any physical violent interaction or burning. But the very fact that the green spheres came through the walls into their house, into where they were, and just showed up, and as Lou writes in the book, we felt monitored. What are the green spheres' assignments versus why would that blue sphere or blue spheres in the Skinwalker Ranch in Utah, why would they suddenly, because two dogs are running and yelping, why would they not only kill those dogs, but literally evaporate them to, as it said, grease spots on the ground? And then I remember when I was doing all of the cattle research starting in September of 1979, and that dominated my life for the next 10 years. And during that period of time, I talked with literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, ranch and law enforcement. But the one thing that was very repeated were orange spheres. Ranchers often saw orange, yellowish orange, orangish yellow, orangish red. That was the color in illustrations in a variety of things. So what is it that the orange or orange red are doing with all the cattle that the green can come in and monitor anything that it wants to and pass through walls? The blue, be careful, don't interact with it. And then there are the other white, yellow, of which there doesn't seem to be anything that is dangerous, but there's a bunch of the color ranges. And I think I was reading something today earlier that the sophistication and the advancement of the scientific knowledge and technology of what we already know from our aerospace people and physicists, that the E.T.s have already demonstrated, could be as much as 500,000 to 1 million years beyond us. Those are words that was in we'll call it a letter that I was reading. And that seems so hugely advanced that how could we be in the same dimension and even relate? Well, this is part of the puzzle. We, humans, we're not advanced technologically, while other beings are. And we're trying to copy. How much better it would be if we were being taught by extraterrestrials that could be introduced to the whole planet in a positive way, and maybe we would be set down on a path where we all became stewards of the earth, protectors of life, instead of endless wars that destroy everything, which is what I keep hearing from humans with E.T. experiences, that they're so afraid that from dreams, from telepathic thoughts, that where we're headed in the future is toward all kinds of destruction. So as we listen to people on the wide range of abductions to investigators, and everybody always raises the same question. Why, Linda? Why? Why has this been held as such a huge secret for so long? I throw it to you, Ian. Throw it into the chat that I would love to get replies tonight on why you all think that denying the truth has been the option for so-called political leaders for decades. Why? Why not the whole truth? Yeah, go ahead.
Let's see what the audience says about that. I want to remind everybody as well that our show goes out as a podcast every week. Wherever you get your podcasts from, you can get our Earthfiles channel downloaded as a podcast. And also remind people to hit the likes and like us, please.
Yes, and Ian, we are over 271,000 subscribers. So we might break 272,000 tonight if you guys will go down and click on the subscription. It doesn't cost you anything, but it helps us. And let's see if we can get up to 275,000 in the near future. Go ahead.
Let's keep it going and keep getting back for more high strangeness every week. I want to acknowledge some people who are very generous in the super chats this evening. We've got Janet Kraft and Caroline Boyce. Also Yin Yang Glow, who says, to my Earthfiles family, do any of you have a tightness in your throat and a feeling of dread coming up at any moment? I need to say a few other dates here. Rendlesham Forest UFO is in the chat and says, do you still believe that 2030 will be the year of some big event, invasion, earth-shattering revelations, destruction of humanity or disclosure? And CB Genesis says, Lou says we will know more in 2027. Something deemed to be released to the public, footage or pictures. What are your thoughts, Linda?
I have heard variations on the same theme. One person in aerospace, I know who he is, I know where he works. It's major, and he has let me know that he does not think that the so-called shared secret, which is becoming almost laughable, meaning, oh yeah, we're alone in the universe, that is not going to survive past the year 2026. He was directly focused on communicating to me when he is expecting there is going to be the announcement, however it's going to be done. And the words were, I don't think we can go past 2026 without explaining why those words. I'm just saying that was one. Another, more recently, was you have talked about the remote viewers who were working for the CIA, NSA, DIA in Washington back in the late 80s, that included Lynn Buchanan and Joe McMoneagle in that group, and how they each found out privately after it was closed down. They had signed NDAs, but apparently they went to dinner and had private discussions about some of the questions that they had remote viewed. And it was Lynn who told me that it seemed that every one of them had been asked to go to the year 2030 and tell the controllers of the remote viewing, what does Earth look like? That's the way it was sketched to me, and what does Earth look like? And that all the remote viewers were seeing lots of water. Well, okay, so that's one track of information. There are other remote viewers more recently who think that there is going to be something that interacts with the sun that could cause some problem. And so in both of these cases, we're talking about something geophysical that's going to happen to our Earth. It didn't include the introduction of extraterrestrials in those specific remote viewing. It was like something geophysical was going to happen to the Earth. Well, you could stack them all up and say, maybe it's all adding up to that we're heading that before, on, or shortly after 2030, maybe this event will have finally occurred. But I don't know anyone who says it's hard proof. And the reason, and all of us should think about this, time can be manipulated. And a timeline that was accessed back in 1989 may have other things that happen that affect that timeline, that affects other timelines. And I personally, if I had the ability to sit down with a tall white, the one thing I would love to start out with is, can you demonstrate for me, with me, how you move time, manipulate time? Is it tied to the different dimensions? What is it tied to? How can we move in time, collapse 10 days to an hour or 30 minutes, as happens in abduction cases? It's the abductions that broke open the first, that the E.T.s have the ability to manipulate time and put the person back in a car, for example, when their speedometer is the only thing that they see go out of focus and come back into focus, and they then learn that that must have been the moment when there was an abduction. So all of this means that unless you understand how you manipulate time, you won't understand how you would manipulate and counter-manipulate time. And if you're counter-manipulating, would it slow time down so much that we could end in a different century, go forward in a different century? Those are the kinds of things I would love to know. And Ian, we have time for one more question.
Yeah, before we just get to that question as well, I'd like to just say this weekend I'm going to be attending the Awake and Aware UK conference at the High Elms Manor in Watford, England. I know that will be a good gathering of people in the UK who want to get together and share their experiences. So I'm looking forward to meeting up with lots of people there. And if anyone wants to come along and share their experiences, feel free to do so. Okay, I've got Tracy Murray is in the audience this evening, and she's got lots of questions about what the situation is. She says that when you're on Ancient Aliens, you've also stated that sometimes it's the aliens that are withholding the truth and not the humans. So it's not necessarily in our hands to release the truth, or in our government's hands.
Absolutely true. And that's what we were implying. Well, the whole thing with Marshall Summers is that the non-humans have their agendas first. That, like humans, they have their goals. They have what they want. What are we to them? It's all going on at all of these different levels, I am convinced. As above, so below, for sure. And maybe some of us had naive thoughts, well, there might be extraterrestrials who have had civilizations so old and so long that they would never lie, they would never cheat, they would... No, I think that we're in whatever this universe is. It seems to be some kind of a training ground, at least, about black versus white. And that means there's always going to be strategy, there's always going to be the taking of, and that may be the whole enchilada about why anybody's here in this particular third dimensional universe. And when they get out, it's to a whole completely different other existence. So on that note, Ian, as always, it is a pleasure to be with you. I'm so glad you're recovering. And we will look forward to you perhaps giving me a report to share, or you plan one to share after you get back from the conference in the UK.
Yeah, sure. And I just want to leave you with Angela Marshall, who says, when I was 3 to 4 years old, I had blue twinkly lights that would come and visit me in my room and fly around the ceiling. They let me fly with them when they came. Sometimes they let me go out of my room. And that's not the first time I've heard that experience as well.
That the lights stayed in the room with the child, not letting the child go out of the room. And the implication has been it was because the E.T.s knew the children would wake up the parents.
Yeah, but it does say here that sometimes they would let me go out of my room.
Right.
So it seems that the orbs would teach the person to fly, and that's another common theme that I've found several times with several of the experiences that I've spoken with.
And what would it be like to be on a world where all of us could talk with, communicate with orbs from other dimensions, universes, and will that ever happen? Meaning a metaphor for Earth finally joining the whole big picture and knowing about all of the planets that have artificial light, that have civilizations. Who are they? Who are we to them? I think it's the most exciting subject there is. And I will see you all next week with more.
Turn on closed captions for YouTube videos by clicking the white CC button on the lower right. The default language for Linda's videos is English. If you would like to see the captions in another language, click on the white settings button next to the CC button. Select Subtitles CC and then select Auto Translate. Select a language, and the captions will now appear in that language.
Sort of gone through, and they will hold their heads. I never had a cat do that before. And they'll pull against the comb, helping me get out snarls. And I think it's the best they've ever been.